Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume. This is part 2 of our interview with Kate Quarfordt. If you like, you can go back and give part 1 a listen. You'll find it wherever you get your podcasts or not. However you're doing it right. Enjoy the show.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
So my introduction to you came when I think that Baby Cams must have followed you on Instagram through the Spark File account.
So I just discovered your artwork and was like, what the actual fuck? I was like, okay, follow.
So that was my first exposure. I was just looking through the feed and I was like,
what's this now?
I really responded to it strongly and positively. Let me put it that way. And then I took I had no idea that Cams knew you. And I just took this deep dive through your Instagram feed. And I was really, really sparked by it. Really sparked by all different aspects of it. The colors that you choose, that you were painting a lot in a book. And I was like, that's something that I could do.
Sure.
And then I could, once it's dry, you don't need a lot of space for it. Nope. You could, I was like, oh, this is something that I could do in a space of my own.
Yes.
I was very inspired by many different aspects of it.
Yes. Your
writing that accompanied it. So
oh my God.
It's a real joy to actually, when we walked into your studio, I was like, this isn't really shaping up to be a question. It's just sort of, I guess it's a thank you, but will you tell us more? I don't know. This isn't even a question.
I feel really a
Take
related
it home,
question.
Cams.
Yeah, because I think we're on the same I guess train of enthusiasm.
You blew my mind.
You blew my mind. And so first visually, and then when I would read your writings that accompanied the paintings, I was telling you, first of all, I just bought a print that I'm super excited about. And it took me a while to decide which one because of the way you wrote about them. And I was like, ooh, but this really spoke to me. You included on one of your many posts, you included this quote from the book that you used, The Moviegoer.
Oh.
To be aware of the possibility of the search is to be onto something. Not to be onto something is to be in despair.
Oh.
We lost our minds over this.
We do like that.
Could you tell us more about it?
So as I said, my dad gave me the book in high school. And high school was a weird time.
Mm-hmm.
Socially, it was really weird.
You
It was
spent a lot of
hard
time with
to
your grandma.
Spent a lot of time with
Yes.
Graham.
Maybe not
Well,
feeling
thank
your
God for
peers
her.
so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, it was just a tricky time. I grew up in a place that was really obsessed with like having the right designer jeans, which I didn't. We were like a Sears, Oshkosh bagosh kind of family, and it was hard as a young person to find that sense of being onto something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on the outside, I probably presented as a very happy, functional human. But I think that deep down, I really understood from an early age the sense of, God, that just kind of numbed out, grayed out feeling of like not finding traction, like not finding the thread, that golden thread that once you're on it, you can just kind of like, you can only see an inch in front of you, but you know you're onto the thing and you can just keep following the thread. And the ways that I found that thread were through conversations with my grandmother, were late nights staying up, listening to Billie Holiday with my dad. My mom too had these incredible forms of artistry that she would share with me. And then little by little in high school, I was lucky enough to get involved with our school's chorus, our madrigal singers and that kind of stuff, which was strange because it was in the context of school. So it was like a class. You would go to the class and you would show up fourth period and then Kairos time would kind of kick in for me. I would sort of forget where I was and I would just be singing and realize like, oh, this is not a school thing. This is like a people surviving and not collapsing under the weight of this despair thing.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing that people do to hold joy. And once I got tastes of that, it was like this need, this desire to follow those threads, to follow the searches. And I have had times in my life, I think that when we kind of catch the thread of that, you hold on as long as you can, and then it feels like the thread wears out and you have to find the next thread. And in the moments between, and I've experienced this a number of times in my life where I'm not on the search and the despair settles in and I just feel like, oh, well, I guess maybe that wasn't my path. Like, I guess maybe I don't have what it takes, or I don't know how to find that magic again. I had this experience recently of getting to sing at Joe's Pub with a singer-songwriter named Treya Lamb, who is a just deep soul and a really direct conduit of this magic that we've been talking about. And it was such a healing experience for me because I think about 15 years earlier, I had gone to Joe's Pub to see a show. It was the Bjorkestra. I'm a huge fan of Bjork. And there's this wonderful group called the Bjorkestra where they would do these incredibly creative Bjork covers in like a full-blown orchestral setting. And it was at a time where I was really in that despair. I was not on the search. I was not doing anything creative. I was burning so much energy trying to be of service to other people. And I wasn't doing anything that even like remotely connected to my own artistry. And I remember standing in the dark at Joe's Pub at this show, watching somebody else sing these songs that I knew every word to, and just thinking, oh, well, I guess that's not for me. Like, I guess I won't ever do that again. And to be back on that same stage, surrounded by these incredibly fierce women and in collaboration with Treya, was just an incredible moment to realize like the search is always there. It's always there for us, and we can feel like we've let go of it, but it's just right there. Just pick it back up again. It's fine.
Yes.
I feel like that is the point of this podcast. It is about looking for those sparks that, to mix my metaphors, that so that wind can catch your creative sails, or to use yours, that you can find those golden threads that sort of like can carry you through and get you into Kairos time, but sometimes just like give you something to sit up in the morning and go, well, I'm going to go open up a fresh page of the journal and I'm going to like pick some new colors today. Something to just that lifeline thread. Yes.
Onto something. I will never think that phrase the same way again, because the number of times where like whether I'm writing a play and perform part of it or work on a project and someone says, I think you're onto something. I will never think of it the same way again. It's like so much deeper than I ever gave that phrase credit for. Onto something. And in your case, in that example, you found the choir. Can you tell us about your work with the choir?
Yes.
Oh, what a joy. These women are so fierce and so beautiful and radiant.
Say the name of the chorus.
So it's called the Resistance Revival Chorus. And it evolved out of the Women's March. Ginny Suss and Sarah Sophie Flicker and Nalini Stamp. There's the 6 co-founders of the chorus. And their names are all online. Anyway, they all gathered up after that big first march in January of 2017 and said, wow, this was incredible. They had all helped to organize that and galvanize it along with, so many other countless incredible women. And they came out of that march and said, okay, that was amazing. But what is missing from this movement is music and joy.
Oh.
We are all grinding our gears, right?
Yes.
Right? So in the 60s, so much of this work, as people were marching for civil rights, so much of this work was buoyed and fueled by music. And that came out of the African-American tradition of singing in church and singing from that place of, and yet, like the world is a broken mess, and yet we uplift joy and we center joy. And joy is a form of resistance. It's a form of resilience. It's a form of survival. And if we lose our joy in the fight for justice, what's the justice worth, right? Like if we are so depleted by the end of this fight that we've gotten what we wanted, but we're so broken that we can't live it, what does that do for anybody, right? And what are we teaching our children, right, about how we resist and how we fight if we've lost our joy? And so this evolved, just a group of women sitting around a kitchen table saying, how can we reinfuse joy into this resistance movement? And they said, well, let's just start a chorus. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea that any of this was unfolding. I was there, the march in Washington on the 17th, and I was very much involved, in 2017 rather. And I was very much involved in that burgeoning protest movie. Not burgeoning, I shouldn't say that, because there was so much work that was done primarily by women of color that led up to that moment.
Right.
I think that's really, really important to keep centering. But I had really
this new awareness of the movement.
As it was spreading and growing and becoming more galvanized and intentional. And so right around that time, it was the summertime. It was like the spring after that march. And I remember I was writing in my journal, and I said, I hadn't been doing any singing. I'd done singing in high school and done musicals, and I had a short-lived, very volatile, weird band at one point that didn't really work out.
But let's just underscore that singing that you had done in high school sounded like a bit of a golden thread lifeline.
That's right. To me. Yeah. So important to me.
And here it comes back.
Right. And just this notion, what I loved about singing in high school is I didn't have to be the soloist. I loved singing in a choir where I could barely hear my own voice, but I was thinking so much about how to harmonize with other people. And just that experience, the synergy of being in a group, and what that does, how that amplifies our voices and our intentions. And so I wrote in my journal, I probably have it somewhere around, literally like, I want to sing with women about things I care about. And I don't need to be the headliner. I want to be one in the number. I just want that feeling again. And not 3 days later, my friend Abena emailed me or Facebooked me or something or other and said, hey, we're putting together this choir. We're going to do a flash mob in the middle of Times Square. We're going to sing, some of the old protest songs from the 60s. We're going to start to create some of our own new protest music. Do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, are you in my head? Like, how did this happen?
Wow.
And I said, yeah, absolutely.
I think that was a time, and this continues to be a time where people are looking for a way where they can take a gift that they have, something that really they knocks on their door, and then combine it with activism.
Yes.
And impact some change in that way. So I feel like it's kismet, and it also makes total sense. The timing makes total sense.
It does.
Do you perform frequently? What's the schedule? Like and how can people find you?
Right.
See you?
So you can find us online. You can find us on Instagram, all the things. So we have our schedule is really heating up. The response from folks right from the start was really, really powerful. To your point, I think that there is a real hunger right now to be in connection, and particularly in a world where like so much of the connection that we do is through the lens of social media, which no shade, that's it can be really powerful and really great. But I think that we're really craving like in the room connection.
That's
like we want to
right.
sing together and actually hear
right.
ourselves singing and hooting and hollering and just like stomping and just making a big ruckus. So right from the start when we started to,
I just had a spark.
Oh, go,
sorry.
Go.
Real-time spark.
Yes, do it.
We were just having a conversation last night with Donna Lieberman, who is the head of the NYCLU.
Yeah.
Yes.
And every year there is an event called Broadway Stands Up for Freedom, and different Broadway performers and others, people who are expressing their activism through creative means and performative means.
Oh my God.
It's at Town Hall. You should
be
sing
there.
at Broadway Stands Up for
Yes.
Freedom. I will send the
Holy
email
crap.
Okay, great.
within the next 48 hours.
Love that.
You were saying.
Yes.
Raising ruckuses. I think that's where we were.
Yes.
Yes. So I love this.
Great.
And you know what's really funny too? 2 nights ago, I went to see American Utopia.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and thinking like, wow, this is so much that. Have you seen it?
I have not.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I'm a huge David Byrne fan, a huge
Sure.
Talking Heads fan. But the spirit of that piece of singing these songs with these little bits and pieces and stories
little
together,
stories.
and the idea of like this is a stage full of musicians who are also immigrants, and what it looks like to really kind of re-envision what's possible.
Yeah.
It was really a stunning moment for me, and it made me think like, oh wow, the chorus. It's so in line with how we do our shows are in that kind of format, and with that same kind of spirit where it's music, it's activism, it's this notion of the alchemy that happens when we're all in that room together. And I was just literally, I just not a day and a half ago texted our group chorus thread and said, Broadway, have we considered Broadway? I think we should do it.
Yeah.
So it would be
amazing.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we perform a lot, and what I love about the chorus is that there's a huge range. I mean, often what we're doing is street protests. It's like a rapid response. Somebody finds out about an action.
Yes.
And it's like, who can come? We've all got this signal thread.
Making change, baby.
And it's like literally just
Right.
like it's happening,
That's
5
Yes.
o'clock tonight. Who's in? Who
Yes.
can music direct? We've got, a number. It's a very leaderful space. So there's a lot of folks who are willing and able to step in to that role. We've got a lot of people who are working musicians. We've got artists. We've got educators. We've got mothers. And so there are people who are, at any given moment might be out on tour, might be like at a conference someplace.
Sure.
And so there's 60 of us, but at no time are we ever all 60 together.
Yes.
It's like
Right.
whoever can show up.
That's right.
We all know each other's parts. We can all step in on like, who's got the alto line? Yep, got it. That's me. No problem.
So exciting.
And so what's been really interesting is that as momentum has, I think at the heart of what we do, protest and activism are always going to be there at the core. And there's also a sort of second prong, which is really uplifting and centering women in music. And so that kind of thread has led us onto some really beautiful stages. We got a chance to sing with Angelique Kidjo at Summer Stage. We were with Ani DeFranco. We sang with Carly Simon at Carnegie Hall. And so like those experiences are starting to
Going to keep on happening.
Yeah,
if I have anything to do with it.
we just recorded an
great.
album, which is getting mixed right now, and that will be coming out in
Oh
the
my
spring.
God.
What do you know what it's
You
called?
are-
It's called the Resistance Revival Chorus, This Joy. Could we sing a
Oh
song called
my
This Joy?
God.
Yeah.
This joy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my God. You're so full of sparks.
Aw.
You're so full of sparks.
You're a basket of sparks.
Incredible. Should we
jump down?
we also mention like you are co-founding a school? Should we just mention what person in their right mind?
Oh God, what a dumb idea, right?
No.
Do you just do this from like 3 a.m. to 4 a.m.?
Yeah.
You
It's like
you
in that
work
little
on
window.
co-founding a school.
But
Well, it's co-founded. It is founded. It is in motion, right? So that crazy town moment of like the actual, oh my God, we're gonna make a thing that is not a thing turn into a thing.
Yeah.
That was like 2014, 15, 16. We opened our doors in 2016. Which is a crazy time, just also in the context of like the political moment. We've been talking a lot about how these things intersect, right? The idea of we're going to create an arts-based middle school with a really diverse population of young people that creates a very inclusive environment so that kids can show up with their whole identity intact in our school. Oh, but we're also going to do that on the year that Trump, of all people, gets elected president. And that's going to happen
What better
when we have
time?
been open. Our doors have been open for like a month and a half, 2 months.
Oh my God.
So navigating that process
Yeah.
with this new group of sixth graders, right? So these were 10, 11, 12-year-olds that we were just
a lot
getting
to
to know,
unpack.
like just
Yeah.
building community, just talking about what does it mean to have this inclusive, diverse space was really,
Oh
it was
my
a powder
God.
keg.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there is a through line of creativity at that school and the mission of the school. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I think that learning is inherently creative, and that shouldn't be a radical statement. But given the state of education in our country right now, it sure as hell is. We have, and with really good, clear, strong intentions. I really want to be careful because I think that there are a lot of amazing educators in the world who have centered the notion of accountability and like, we really do need to teach the babies to read and write and do math. We really do, right?
Of course.
And we need to be able to measure that. And there's a lot of socioeconomic and race, like lenses through which we must look in order to determine, the work that we're doing. We need to be measuring it. We need to be clear about that path. And also, there is so much great work that can happen in a classroom that is not necessarily measurable in those kinds of ways with those very limited metrics that we often use to determine how kids are learning and growing. Mm-hmm. I think that the creative process is inherently differentiated. Kids create and learn how to create in their own way at their own time. And that runs really antithetically, or has a tension, a creative tension with this other way that we've been viewing education in this country for a long time. And our sweet spot at our school, like the thing that we are, that ever elusive kind of like moving target that we're always kind of working toward is, and I actually don't think, I think that socially or in terms of how we've been taught to think about education, there is this tension, but I don't actually think it exists. I think that when you're actually doing great creative work, it is helping you become a better reader and writer. And I think that when you're actually doing great creative work, it's growing that muscle and that way of seeing that helps you improve in math. And so for me, I don't see those things as antithetical. Yeah. And yet,
they're integrated.
When you talk to, exactly. To me, they're very integrated, right? Like I do this wonderful unit on the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio with my kids, where I just completely geek out. They completely geek out with me. At first they're like, oh God, it's an art class. Why do we have to do math, right? But like, let's look at how the Parthenon was built. Let's look at the spiral in a pine cone. Let's look at these patterns in music and see that they're all linked by this one very simple but incredibly elegant and expansive property. And that these ways of knowing and these ways of learning and seeing are your birthright. And yet our schools are not set up to give you access to that way of knowing. And so we're trying to do that work at a time where we also really need to like post some good reading and math scores. So it's a really interesting tension and an interesting dance.
I can't help but think about how you're teaching them to know themselves as creative beings and that you're raising this little generation of students who won't have any issue calling themselves artists with a capital A, because they will know themselves in that way. Yeah.
From the jump.
And I think that's a huge gift. I really do.
I have a question. You do so much. And then I've also, you're really in the middle of making so much. And then I've also seen your to-do list in your, like you have on your chalkboard in your office, you have sort of like things that you also aim to, aspire to make. Is there a creative thing that you know that you have to do before you're done?
I think that there's a book in me rumbling around somewhere under the surface.
I second that emotion.
I started writing a book in 2010. I was directing The King and I in the Bronx.
Sure.
And as you do. And I was really fascinated with the story of Anna Leonowens as like this white lady who goes to what was then known as Siam, who it's like this wild kind of layered, there's Rodgers and Hammerstein, right? These like two Jews are going to write a story about a white lady who goes to Siam and like this like all of these crazy, and then I as a white lady, I'm going to go and do that show in the Bronx where all of the students that I'm working with are students of color. And what does that mean? Where I'm, like the young woman that I'm working with is learning, to speak in a British accent, and we're like unpacking all that. And then we do research into Anna Leonowens' past and find out that she actually was not white. She was of mixed race descent. She was born in India, and her husband passed away, and she realized that her only ticket was learning how to speak with a British accent and passing as a white woman. She was actually from Wales. Yes, I know.
There's spark for you.
I know.
So Sparkish.
So gets on a boat to Siam, and in that transition, like teaches herself to be a British governess person.
Oh my
and
God.
And like does that because being a woman and being a widow, and
because what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
You have to survive.
Right. So unpacking all of these layers, and I think I got a bit stalled in that process because I kept coming into this realization of like I was telling the story from my perspective, but because I was working with all these young folks, they were necessarily part of the story, and I kept having these moments of realizing that I'm writing their stories, but from my voice as the white educator who's doing this work with young people. And I have never felt ever like, oh, I'm like this magical white lady that's coming into this like poor bedraggled neighborhood and like saving the kids, and like you know my whatever with Michelle Pfeiffer Dangerous Minds, like my little black leather jacket, like that's been so far from my experience. And yet as I was writing this thing, I was like, oh, I don't know quite how to bust out of that box. And I just had this moment where I was like, you know what, just like drop it for a while. Like, maybe you don't have to make that right now. Let that go. Those stories are going to be there. Maybe there's another way that it'll move or shape. And maybe the book, maybe that's the book, you know, the painted book is the book. And maybe it'll come through in another form. And I think that as I've gotten older, I've started to trust that these goals that we set for ourselves are useful because they get us onto something, but they don't necessarily have to show up in the world exactly the way that we envision them, right? Like they can morph and change into something else.
You got your eyes on the prize. You got your eyes on the prize, and then sneak attack from the side. It was actually a step towards something else that is totally surprising and comes from left field.
I think too, I'm not a big like New Year's resolution maker. It just doesn't. It's not how my brain works. But I did have a moment of sitting down in early January this year, and my New Year's resolution was to stay open for the side sneak attacks. Yeah. Like here I am. I'm like putting like lots and lots of effort into visual art, but like, what if someone came around and said, you know what, we're going to make a play about XYZ, and why don't you come and help? Like, let's stay open to the wild possibility of somebody says like, I want to give you a $20,000 grant to go and make a movie in Paris. Like, okay, cool. Like, and why not? Why not just like, so that's my kind of New Year's resolution, is to sort of be open to some wild, ridiculous, out of left field creative adventure.
That's a goodie. I love that.
Kate, you do so much, as we've mentioned. Do you have a clear vision of what it's all for?
I think a lot about the women in my family who were filled with so much creativity as young people and didn't get a chance to fully live it.
Word.
Yeah.
My grandmother on my mother's side was an actress in London when World War II broke out, and her parents told her that because she was Jewish, it would be unsafe for her name to appear on a program, so she had to leave. And so she came to New York and got married and didn't act again.
Wow.
And my grandma on my dad's side told me when I was 13, 14, in that high school moment of spending a lot of time with Grams, she told me that she used to write a lot of poetry. And I said, oh my gosh, I like to write poetry too. Will you show me your poems? And she said, oh no, dear, don't be silly. I burned them when I got married.
Oh, that's chilling.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And she found so many other beautiful ways to channel that inherent, natural, bubbling, creative life force that was so much a part of her. But I think so much about those two women and so many women who are just full of creativity and full of artistry, and who, for whatever reason, either pressure from the outside or pressure from the inside, don't give that creative fire any oxygen. And I have been that woman. And I don't want to be that woman anymore.
That's right. And you're giving permission to all the others as you forge your path.
Yeah.
Everyone has permission to follow those same steps. Oh, Kate.
Fuck.
That's
Finally,
a good one.
That is a fucking great one. Who or what is sparking you these days?
I would say the singers that I get to share the stage with from the chorus, each of whom individually has so much joy and artistry to offer. I'm doing one of the collaborations that I talked about with my friend Nilusha, who's writing this incredibly beautiful song cycle called
And
10 Blessings.
And you're giving us the viz.
Yes.
The
Yes.
visuals.
Exactly. And singing in that, and contributed some writing to that. And I just like the way that she has envisioned this project and the way that she leads it with such grace and clarity and generosity of spirit is such a pleasure to be in the room with. And she brings out the beauty of each individual collaborator in a way that's so careful. And so she, talk about preparation. She comes so exquisitely prepared. She does so much work on the back end that she can then show up in that rehearsal room and it flows out of her effortlessly. And I'm like, I'm on to you. I know how much work you're doing behind the scenes. I think of Treya, who I mentioned, who's just this incredible channel for artistry, and same thing, just so much grit and hustle and heart that goes into that work so that she can show up barefoot in her white tunic, strumming on her guitar. Like it's just nothing. It's rolling out of her so freely like water. And I think, I know. I think of my friend Dina, who's just making incredible jewelry. I think of my friend Ilana, who's just written her second book of poetry. Like I'm so grateful to be surrounded by so many incredible women makers who, and you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation about the work that gets done in the inconvenient moments. Yeah. Like so many, my friend Yen, right, who is an architect and a mother of two, and, finds those moments, those pre-dawn moments at her kitchen table to make these incredible drawings. And I just think so much, I think about Lucille Clifton, this incredible poet who had many kids and was always like sort of writing a line of poetry on the back of a brown paper bag while she's frying an egg and feeding a kid and mending a clothes, whatever. And I think that that's true for a lot of creators in general, but I think a lot of women creative people, right, are finding that discipline to sit down at the blank canvas with the sink full of dishes, which you all got a chance to witness. My sink is full of dishes right now. Proudly full of dishes.
They can wait.
They can wait.
They can wait. You just described probably the history of female art throughout time, like how it gets made.
What did you say specifically? You said if it seems like I'm going to butcher it. Painting gets done when there's a sink full of dishes.
Yeah, painting only gets done when there's a sink full of dishes.
Painting only gets done when there's a sink full of dishes. Give yourself permission to paint. Give yourself permission to have a sink full of dishes while you do.
That's right. Yeah. All that can wait.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
Your sparks are all those women.
Yeah.
And I don't know, not so ironically, you're a woman who sparks us. That
makes me so happy.
Yes. And I also want to, not to insert us into this equation,
We're in it
but
now.
I'm about to do
Go
it
ahead.
because you said something before we started that rocked my world, which is that you come into this beautiful studio that is your heart and you listen to this while you paint.
I do.
Which felt to me that I was like, there is no greater compliment you could give us.
No, it's from the heart,
really is.
Truly.
I am so honored by that.
Like now I'm picturing the Spark File in this space. It makes me really, really happy.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is how synergy works. There's a reason that, that myth of the solo artist who's just there toiling. It's usually a dude, right? Some
mastermind.
Yes.
Smoking cigarettes and just like being tortured all alone. Just
all
like
the genius comes from him.
All the genius like hustling up the mountain, whatever. Oh God. So many of the creative folks that I so admire, and you all included, are networked in this really beautiful synergistic way. We are not doing this work alone.
It is nourishing.
Right?
I have to say, just sitting here being with you, it is so sparkish and so nourishing. And I really didn't mean to insert us into your.
No, I said it. I was like, I'm having an out of body experience where I'm recording
I feel like that
the
was
podcast.
Sounded super narcissistic.
Not at
and
all.
I didn't
not at
mean
all.
to, but I guess it is. Pridefulness is a sin. But I was
That's
also
right.
proud.
Oh, hell
sinner.
no.
You're a
Listen,
sinner.
listen. Women don't do enough bragging. And listen,
Take that, everybody.
see,
So there.
it is okay. It is okay.
Kate,
Thank you so
Thank you
What a
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you both so much.
We are
You
so
really
happy.
are. You are.
You are
a basket
a
of sparks.
walking spark.
You are.
Aw.
Just
Oh, boy.
spewing sparks. I see you like walking down the street, just spewing sparks. Sort of like Pigpen, but the opposite. The opposite. Yeah.
No, a little actual Pigpen in the mix. Let's be clear. A little grit
that.
never hurt anybody.
That's it. We hope that this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark that you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and you've fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, won't you email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
And be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate, 5-star review it. If you like this podcast, please won't you share it with people you love? If you didn't like it, Kate, what do you say to your critics?
It's okay. I'm going to keep making my thing anyway.
Yes.
And you know what? You should go out and make something too.
I love that.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door.
Kate's signing it too.
Kate is signing it too.
Forever.
There you go.
It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to locate it. You got to date it. You got to be like Kate Quarfordt and multi-passionately create it.
You got to take it and make it. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.